All right, so welcome to today's lesson. Today I'll be introducing you to location-based reminders. So remember last week we worked with Google Maps and Firebase, and whenever you clicked on a location, a long click on the map, we saved the location to Firebase. Today we are going to extend that. We are going to go a step further to implement geolocation such that when a user walks into a particular location, the person sees a notification. All right, so first of all, I'm just going to run you through the slides that we'll be using. We'll be creating a map activity, and then we'll be implementing some location permissions that are needed to be able to get the user location. And then we'll be working with creating a geofence. So a geofence is technically an area that you put around a point. And so whenever there is an entry or an exit from that particular area that you have set, that particular geofence, you can do so many things. In our case, whenever you enter a particular geofence, we are going to display a notification to the user. Or when you stay in the geofence for a certain stipulated amount of time, we perform a particular interaction. And so this is important. For instance, you have a fleet tracking application and you don't want your drivers to come to a particular area. So once they enter a particular area, you send them a notification telling them, hey, this place is restricted. Or you have a food delivery application and you want to get notified as the admin. You want to get notified when your drivers enter a zone where they are going to deliver food or where they are going to pick food up. And so once they enter the zone that you create, that geofence, you are going to receive a notification. So there are so many things that we could do with geofences. And so, like I said, you have the entry and then you have the exit. You can perform different interactions based on these transitions. All right, so we'll be working on geofence. We'll be creating a geofence based on a long click of a map. And this is a function for creating a geofence itself. And then will be displaying a notification to the user. We have a reminder entity class that we'll be creating, and then we'll be monitoring our geofence with the broadcast receiver. So we listen to geofence triggers here in the broadcast receiver. And then if time permits, we'll be working with a job scheduler, a different API that allows you to schedule jobs to run over a period of time. Okay, so let's begin. So first of all, we need to create a map activity. And so I'm going to go to my Android file, new project. Okay, new project, and I'm going to select Google Maps. And what do I call this? We'll call this Geofencing clone. All right, so I'm going to save this. And here we go. Okay, so the other day, you remember we had to create the API key for application. So I just click on this. Excuse me. Yeah, so I'm just, oh, why isn't it? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new project. And then we create an API key. Nice. So I'm just going to copy this API key and return to my application and paste it here. All right, so I can clear everything else now. Excuse me. Yeah. All right, this is good. So we can, let me just hide. Let me hide the video panel. Oh no, hide floating, okay. Okay. All right, so I'm able to hide that now. We go into the maps activity that is created for us. I can clear these, and then I'm just going to refactor this name to use a Kotlin convention rather than a Java convention. So I'm just going to call it map. And this is good. All right, I'll go one step to clear all this. And so that is fine. Next, just like we did the other day, we are going to go to Firebase and we are going to create a new application. So instead of creating a new project like we did, you could see that there are so many applications here. All that we have to do is to add one new application, and then I'm going to choose Android. And this application, what is the name of our application? We called it Geofencing Clone. So I can copy the package name from here. I'm just going to paste it in here. And I will give it a name, Geofencing Clone. And then I'm going to register this application. So download. There we go. I can just open this in the Finder. And then drag it into my app. Because the name didn't come out too well, I already had one in there. So I'm going to go ahead and locate this particular file. Where are you? Just hang on a sec. Okay, nice. Now it is here. So I'm just going to rename it and take out the one. It's just supposed to be, yes, this way. Okay, so we have our Google services.json file in there. Now we need to add these dependencies. So we go to the project level and we add this dependency in there. And then we come to a Kotlin version. We copy that bomb. We go down to our dependencies. I'm rushing through this because we did this last week. And so you should fairly remember. Also, I'm going to change this from analytics. I'm going to change it to database. And then we also need the location dependency. So I'm going to implementation com.google.android.gms play services location, and I'm going to use 0.0. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So now we can hit on the sync, and this will give us the location APIs. This gives us Firebase. This gives us the database. We haven't used analytics, but you can use analytics for monitoring downloads on your app and various other parameters. All right, so now we are good. We go back to our slide. What does our slide say? It says that we should create a map activity, and then we should initialize a fused location client. And this location client is what's going to help us to be able to get the user's location. And then with a geofencing client, we're able to create a geofence on the map. So let's do that. We are going to create variables. So that'll be private let init var, excuse me, and fused location client. And this will be fused location client provider. Awesome. We do the same thing and we call this geofencing client. Okay, so we have geofencing client in here. All right, so all we have to do is to initialize these fused location clients. It was location services the get fused location client, and we say this. Same way we initialize our geofencing client using location services, the geofencing client, and we provide this as a context. All right, so we have finished with the first step of creating a map. We have added the API key, and so our map should fairly work. And we have initialized the fused location map variables. Okay, so the next thing is to implement the location permissions. And so these location permissions, to be able to access the user location, we need to find out the user needs to, first of all, grant permissions to the application to be able to load their location, or for the application to be able to detect the location of the user. And so we need to ask for these permissions if they don't already exist. So here we are checking if the location permission is already granted. And on the right-hand side, this code snippet is the result of us asking. So did the user grant us the permission or not? If they didn't grant us, what do we do? Stuff like that. So we are going to implement this next. All right. So we need to create a private function called is location permission granted. And it's going to return a Boolean. All right, so we are technically just return text compat dot check self permission. And our context is this, or we could use application context. And then we want to check if our manifest dot permission manifest dot, okay. Let's see what was imported for manifest. Okay, it imported java.util.jar.manifest, but that is not what we want. Okay, so let's ask for the options available. And we need an Android one. So just Android, so we click this. And so we need permission, great. And we want to check for find location. If this is equal to a package manager dot permitted dot granted. So we want to see that, okay, first of all, we are checking if find access location has been granted, or whether course location permission has been granted. So again, we check self permission, and our context is application context. And we say that go into our manifest and see whether we have course location granted and whether it's granted or denied. Okay, so that permission, we're checking if that permission is granted. So if either of them is true, this is going to return true. If both are false, then we get false from this particular result. All right, so with that said, we can go back into our application file, into our map results, and we're going to say, all right, so this map here is coming as a very simple map without a lot of controls. But today I want to introduce you to one more thing, the UI settings. This allows you to include various controls on your application. For instance, the zoom control enabled, or the compass when you want the compass to show, or when it has so many properties here. Whether you can zoom gesture, use a gesture on the map to zoom in or out. Today, I'm just going to work on a zoom control enabled. I'm going to set this to true so that when we run the app, we'll be able to see the plus and minus icons that we can click to zoom in and out instead of just trying to use the gestures on the map. All right, so with this done, we're going to check if is location granted. So if our location is not granted, what do we do? If our location is not granted, we want to ask for the location permissions from the user. So we create a variable called permissions, and it's going to be a mutable list of manifest permissions. So manifest of permission that find access, and then manifest that permission dot course location. All right, but here is the interesting thing. What if our application is from 100Q and above? Google introduced some conditions. If you are running on 100Q and above and you want to access location data in the background, then you need to enable the background location permission. So we are going to first check if our build.version, we need to import this, that version.sdk number is greater than or equal to build.version codes.q. So if it is greater than or equal to q, that means that we are running on 110 and above. Then we need to add to our permissions a new permission, which is the background location, access background location. All right. So just as these things, this one find location was added first, course location second, and possibly access background location third. This is going to occupy index 0 of this list, index 1 and index 2. And so when we are checking the results, later on when we implement it, you realize that we are accessing index 1, the results for index 1. Index 0 will be for find location, results for index 1 will be for course, and the results for index 2, if it exists, if our application is running on 110 and above, then it would be for background location. Okay, so with these done, then we are going to actually request our request for these permissions. So how do we do that? We say activity compat dot request request permissions, and we're going to use this activity because we are in a map activity. And then our permissions, mutable list, we are going to change this to type array. And then we provide a code, request code. Okay, now this is not defined, so we come back to the top and we define this as a constant, and then I'm going to go ahead to define a number of other constants that we're going to use. So to create constants, we call const val and then location request code. Now location request code, I'm going to set it to 123. Const val, I'm going to say Geofence location request code. I'm going to set it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Const val camera zoom level, and I'm going to set that to 13F. And then these other ones that we'll be using later, I'm just going to go ahead and define them. So geofence radius, the size of our geofence, I'm going to set that to 400, or maybe just 500 to be big enough. Our geofence ID, and I'm going to say it should be a reminder geofence ID. We have geofence expiration, and that should be 10 days, so times 24 hours times 60 minutes times 60 seconds. All right. And there's also geofence dwell delay. So if you remember the image, this is a dwell. We are saying how long that you have been within the geofence. All right, so that is what we're going to do here. And I'm just going to set that to 10 seconds. So if I'm going to take an action based on that, and this is going to be 10 days. All right, so when we dwell in the geofence location for more than 10 seconds, then we take a particular action. All right, so I think this is about it. We could also create a private val tag, and this is going to be maps activity class.java.simple name. Okay. All right, just in case we need to log anything, we just use this tag. All right. So now we're going to request for whenever the map is ready. If the location is not granted, then we are going to request for it. But what happens if the location is already granted? So if the location is granted, we're going to go ahead and we are going to find we are going to enable our current location. So we are going to say map dot is my location enabled, and we are going to set that to true. So we are going to enable our location. And what we're going to do next is to get our last known location data. And the fused location client is going to help us with that. So last location, I'm going to come back to this pretty soon. So on Sunset listener, what do? We have a location object. And so we check if our location object is not equal to null, then we use with map, which gives us access to the Google map. And then we say Okay, val lat and longitude equals lat long class, and then we provide a we use a location object to get the latitude and longitude. Then we create a latitude and longitude object, and we're able to set that to the camera position. So we call on move camera, and we say camera update factory the new latitude and longitude, which is now what we created. And then we're going to provide a zoom, camera zoom level to it. Okay, now this requires that we have a permission check. This one requires that we have a permission check. Now it's just an additional security to make sure that we have granted permissions before using this. And so I'm going to say, I'm going to ask Google to add it for me. And it's a pretty long string. So I'm going to format it so that this thin line that you see here, this thin line means that your text, your code shouldn't exceed the size that users will have to, other developers will have to scroll this way to read in order to understand. So I'm going to break this down and structure it much better so we are able to see. Okay, so this is going to go down further. I'm going to bring down this manifest as well. All right, so everything is within the boundary of this line. All right, so what is checking here is that it's making sure that indeed you have your access location enabled and your course location enabled. Now, if any of them is true, both of them will return true. So I can go ahead and remove this. If it is not true, then it says that we should just return. But one thing you can do is to call the request permissions in here as well. If it is not true, then we are going to request for it. So we could actually copy this and but then we'll have to create these permissions again. So we could decide to move this whole thing into a function and then call that. So I'm going to leave that to you to do. I'm just going to return here. And so now this should work pretty fine. Okay, so we have, we're able to get our last known location. But what happens if our last known location does not exist? So one thing I would decide to do is to manually set my default location. This is not advisable if you are implementing a real life application, since you do not know where the user is going to be. But I am going to set mine to my current location, which is here in Olu. So I'm going to provide a latitude and longitude, and I'm going to provide a camera zoom level. All right, so if I do not know, if the application does not know my last location, it's just going to use this and it's going to set me here. This looks too specific. Let me reduce it to 5. Okay. All right, so far so good. What do we want to do? We want to implement the on long click. So when we long click on the map, we create a geofence around that particular location. But before we do that, since we are requesting for permission, we need to ensure that the permissions are handled correctly. So we are going to, okay, before we go to the permissions, let's create the function. We are saying that on long click of the map, we need to create the geofence. So first of all, we are going to create the function set long click. That takes a map. And then we're going to say map.set on map long click. All right, so we're creating this listener. And we're saying that, okay, we want to add, first of all, a marker. We want to add a marker to the location where we are actually long clicking. So marker options dot our position, then we provide our lats and long, and we provide a title for that, and we say current location. Okay, and we want to show the info window like we did last week. After that, because we want to create a geofence, we want to create a circle around the location that we create. All right, this circle. So we need to add the circle. So we're going to go to map.add circle, just like we added a marker. And the circle takes circle options, just like a marker options. And we are going to center it around our latitude and longitude. And then we're going to provide a stroke color. And our color will be ARGB. And so the first is the alpha. And so this time we say alpha should be 50 and our red 70. Our green should be 70 and our blue should be 70 as well. And next we use a field color. And again, we call color.argb. And we say this time around our alpha should be 70. Our red should be 150, our green 150, and our blue should be 150. Okay, this looks good. Lastly is the radius itself. So what is the radius? We already defined our radius up as 500, if you remember. So our radius is an int 500, but here we realize that it requires a double. So all that we have to do is to double, convert it to a double. All right, so our marker, our cycle is done. And next is that we are going to, we can either decide to zoom in to remove the camera to the location. We'll provide a latitude and longitude and we zoom camera level, or we can decide not to do that. All right, so we did all these last week with the exception of the adding of the cycle. We did a marker and then we used the camera. And then after that, we set our data into the database. But last time we were using a latitude and longitude. Today, I want to create a custom object, a reminder class, and then we're going to send that instead. So I'm going to define a database, Firebase or database, and we import that. Then we create a reference. We call our database.getReference. And we are saying that our reference should be called reminders. So this time around, before I insert data into the database, I want to get the key for the data I'm about to insert. So a simple way to get a key is to use our reference, and then we are going to push. And when you push, it's going to create, push is technically just putting something in, right? Yeah, so it's going to put something there and it's going to return the key of that thing, although that thing that it puts there is actually empty. So now, when we put, if I go to real-time database, so when you put, this is the key of whatever object this contains in the, of whatever data goes in there. So the key is what, this is the key, this is the key, this is key, this is key. All right, since this is a NoSQL database, the structure can be different for any particular key. And so when we put, we get a key, which is either of these, And then we're going to use that key to insert data into that particular location. So when we come back here, you see that we go to the particular key and we are going to insert data into that particular location. All right, so first of all, we want to be careful. We want to check if our key is not equal to null. If it is not null, then we are going to create our reminder object, and we say reminder. That will take a key. I will take our latitude and longitude or latitude, and I'll take our latitude or longitude. Okay, so we are going to create a custom object called reminder, and that has 3 fields: a key, a latitude value, and a longitude value. So we could add so many other things. We could say timestamp and provide a time. We could take notes. We could create any number of properties in there, but we will need to define this reminder class. All right, but before we define that, after creating a reminder, what do? We take our reference object and we say that it should get a child. And because we have already created a key, we get access to that particular child. And we are saying, okay, set this value to that particular child. And the value that we say it should set is our reminder object. Okay, so after we are done with this, then we can say that, okay, now let us create a geofence. Now this function is yet to be created, but our geofence is going to take our latitude and longitude. It's going to take the key value that we have, and we are making sure it's not null, and our geofencing client that we define at the top. So first of all, I'm going to create this reminder object, and this is going to be a simple data class. So we just come in here, right-click, new, a Kotlin class, and we select data class, and then we say reminder. Okay, so this is all that we need. And so what properties do we have in there? We have a key, and we say our key should be a string, and we initialize that. Okay, var lat, and it's going to be a double because the latitude values are doubles. And okay, so this is all we need. Depending on the number of properties, if we wanted notes, we could add notes. If we wanted something else, timestamp and all that, we could add that all here. All right, so now our reminder has been imported for us already. So the next thing is for us to create a geofence. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a private function, create geofence. That takes a location object of latitude, longitude, and that takes a key that is a string, and that takes a geofencing client that is a geofencing client. Nice. Okay. Now we are going to do some interesting things here. First of all, so we're going to create a geofence. So our geofence is going to be a geofence that we call the builder function, and we're going to say set request ID, which we have defined at the top, geofence ID, and we're going to say set the circular region. Okay, the area around which we are going to create the circle. And when I say this circle, when I say circle, this particular circle, okay, so which area are we going to create that geofence? So we are saying that, okay, from a particular point and a certain radius, this whole place is a geofence. Okay, so over here, we are creating a circle based on the radius. So from a certain point, based on that radius, we are creating this circle. but it doesn't make it a geofence. It just puts this color on top of that particular location. So what we are doing in creating over here in this geofence is that this circular region, which is going to match up to the same radius, this circle, what we are saying, okay, we are converting this whole area into a geofence. And so that is what we are doing in here. And this takes, we're going to take our location object, and we're saying the latitude, our location object, the longitude. So these two will give us the current spots. For instance, in this particular case, it is a California Avenue Caltrain station. So the latitude and the longitude of this particular location, which is here, and then a particular radius that gives it to the circular look. So the latitude and longitude and our geofence radius in here. But it's underlined and it says that it requires a float, but currently we have an int. So we say, we convert it to float. Nice. All right, so we say, okay, this geofence that we are creating should expire over a period of time. All right, so we say geofence expiration. And it's supposed to be of type long. So it's going to expire after 10 days. And we want to set what kind of transition are we looking at? Is it that, what kind of transition are we looking at? This is a transition, this is a transition, this is a transition. So what transition are we monitoring for this particular geofence? All right, so transition type that I want to look at today is geofence the entry. So enter or geofence or dwell. All right, so I'm gonna do it this way. Yeah, okay. This is good so that it doesn't exceed our line. And then next is set loitering delay. So the loitering delay is technically with the dwell. How long should the individual or the user be within this geofence for a particular event to be triggered? So that is the delay. And so at the top, we already created a delay time. Remember, we had this geofence dwell delay, and we set it to 10 seconds. So once you go into the location, you're not going to last more than 10 seconds, and then whatever transition or whatever activity we need to take, or whatever execution that needs to be done will be done. So we build this, and now we have a geofence created. Next is creating a geofence request. So we say geofencing request builder. All right, and what should we are going to set our initial trigger. So what is going to be our initial trigger? Our initial trigger is going to be geofencing requests dot initial trigger enter. So when we enter the geofence, then that is going to be our initial trigger. So entering is going to be the trigger. Okay, and then we add our geofence that we just created above, and then we build. Excuse me. And then we build. So now we have a geofence request object. Next, we are going to create an intent. And our intent is going to be, okay, so we need to execute something. What are we going to execute? So we have an intention of doing something. And the intention we have of doing is to open a Geofence Receiver. Okay, so in our Geofence Receiver, that is where we are going to be monitoring our broadcast event. So we created the long click on the map. We have created our geofence. We are yet to come to the notification. We have created an entity class, but we are saying that, okay, our broadcast receiver is the one that is going to be listening for the events. And so we are going to create this class here, Geofence Receiver. And you could see that over here, it is listening for particular transitions. And the transition is enter and dwell. So so it is technically listening for these transitions, and then it's going to take particular actions based on those transitions. All right. So we are going to come back. We are going to create this Geofence receiver, and when we create this intent to open this Geofence receiver, we are going to put some values in there. We're going to put the key. This key, which is coming from the key for our data in Firebase. What we want to do is that we want to, when we enter this, when we create a geofence, we save the latitude and longitude of that particular location to Firebase, okay, which we do here. Now, what we want to do is that when we enter that particular geofence, we want to retrieve the latitude and longitude of that particular location from Firebase. We don't want to pass it directly. We just want to retrieve it from Firebase. So today you are learning one more thing, how to retrieve data from Firebase. All right, so to do that, we need the key. Mind you, Firebase comes with key values, so many entries could be in here. And so we need the particular key. And so if we expand this, we need a particular value. So we need the key here to be able to access that specific value. So that is what we want to do. So we supply the key in here, and then we're saying that, okay, let's put some extra message in there. And so our extra message is going to be what we want to display to the user when they receive the notification. Woohoo. Geofence detected. All right. Okay, so that is a message we want to send. We could also send the latitude and longitude values in there, but this would be it. So this is our intent. And then with this intent, we're going to create a pending intent. A pending intent is an intent to do something, but this particular intent is waiting for something to occur. So it's pending. All right. And so it's pending a broadcast. All right, so this pending intent takes a context which we will supply as application context. It takes a request code, which we would say should be 0. It requests an intent, which we have created in here, and then a flag. And our flag is going to be pending intent.update. Okay, cool. So we have created our pending intent. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to check if our application is running on an Android version 10 and above. If it is running on Android version 10 and above, then we need to make sure that we have background location enabled. Remember when we were creating over here, we weren't checking for background location. And so we need to make sure that if it is running on Android 10, then we have background location enabled. And so that is what we're going to do here. We're going to say if our build.version.sdk int is greater than or equal to our build.version codes.q, then we're going to check if our context compat dot check self permission. We have our application context, and then we have the manifest dot permission. We're checking if the background location value is actually permitted. So we are saying that if this is not equal to package manager dot permission granted, then we are going to request it. So if this access background location has not been granted, then we are going to request it. So to request, we have activity compat dot request permissions, just like we did previously. Our activity is going to be this, and then we need an array of permissions. This time around, it's only one permission, the background location. And our location request code, this time around, we are using the Geofence because it's only for the Android version 10 and above. Okay, so now that this is done, we're going to say that So, however, if the permission already exists, then we are just going to call our geofencing client, and then we are going to add our geofence, and it's going to be a geofence request and an appending intent. And this same is true if our application is not running on Android 10 and above. So if it is not running on Android 10 and above, then we are not going to check for this. We are just going to go ahead and add our geofence. So that is it for adding geofences. But we need to create this geofence receiver, and we need to check for permission results. So I'm going to go ahead to implement our permission results first. And it's a function that will just override. Okay, so we have on requests, you could see request permission results here. I'm gonna format this, and all right. So this is good. Now, we are requesting permissions twice. We are requesting permission for access background location, and we also request for permission over here. All right, so we are going to be checking for two permissions. And so first of all, we check for the background. And we say if our request code is equal to our Geofence request code. Okay, so when we supply the request code here, in our results, it comes to the request code that we supplied. So we want to see, is this particular results that we are receiving for this particular action or some other action? If it is for this action, then we know how to handle it. If it is for the previous action, then we handle it differently. And so since it is for the background location data, we are going to say that, okay, if our permissions, which is this array of permissions, is not empty, okay, and our grant results, so these are our grant results, right? That its position 0 is not equal to package manager dot granted. All right, so why are we looking for grant result position 0? Over here, you see that our request is contains only one element. And since it's an array, array indexes begin from 0. So this particular permission is in position 0. And so the results will also, as an array, would also be in position 0. So we are checking position 0 for this particular permission. If we had multiple ones, if we had another, then that one will be position 1, position 2. And so we'll have to check for all those. But here, since this particular location code, we are only looking for the permission for background location, we are going to use this. Okay, now if it is not granted, you could ask the user to grant it. But in this particular exercise, all that I'm going to do is to toast, and I would want you to create a function that asks for this particular permission again. So it just recalls that particular function over here, or you could duplicate your code. But if you don't, it's not best that you duplicate code. So you just you can extract this whole thing into a function and then call the function in here. All right, so every toast requires a message. So my message is going to be that this app needs background location to be enabled. Okay, and I'm going to say toast.length, it should be long, and I'm going to show. All right, so that is it. So I said that you should, one thing you should do is to call or request permissions again here. All right. Now, what if the result code is not geolocation fence, but the other location? So if request code is equal to location request code. All right. If our location code is equal to the request location code, then I'm going to say, all right, if my grant results is not empty, and okay, look at this carefully, and my grants results at position 0 is equal to package manager permission granted, or my grant results at position 1 is equal to package granted. Oh, yeah. Okay, so when we are requesting for the location, which is in here, we are providing the type array, right? Now our type array could either be 2 or 3. All right, so first of all, this was inserted into the permission. So this is in location 0, this is in location 1. And this only happens if our Android version is greater than 10, is 10 and above. So if the Android device is not running Android 10 and above, this would not hold. So it's just going to be 0 and 1. And so we are checking for 0 and 1 down there. And we are going to check for this separately later on. So first of all, we are checking for access find location, and which is in position 0, and access course location, which is in position 1. All right, so we're going to say that if activity compat dot check self permission, if this is not empty and either of them is true, then excuse me, this is auto-generated. If this is not empty and either of them is true, then we are going to say that our map should check if should enable our current location. Yes, and then we are going to set map. We're going to call on map ready, and we are going to provide our map. However, if it is not, so if the user did not grant the permission, then we are going to show a toast again. This time I'm just going to copy and paste instead of rewriting the whole thing. That this app needs location permission to function. All right, so if the user refused to grant permission, then we need to provide this. But you could see that ideally, just providing this doesn't make sense because it doesn't provide a user the option to enable the permission again. So I would say over here, since we really need that permission in order to work, I would say you should, again, do what you're doing over here, request permission again. All right. And just like Google did previously, it's telling us that we need to implement a permission check. So we're going to put a permission check in there, and I'm going to delete this whole thing and reformat this nicely. So we are able to fall within the space limits to keep the code in one place, so it becomes much more readable. We could do this as well. So the if condition, we consider the if condition ends, and then what our response will be. Okay, so that is the end for the request permission result. And so we had one thing pending, our Geofence Receiver. So we need to create a new file, and we're going to call that a new Geofence Receiver. Nice. And this is going to be extending a broadcast receiver. And we technically implemented the onReceive method. And what are we going to do here? First of all, we're going to declare a lit init var key. We are declaring this because we'll be retrieving these values from our intent, which we are passing over. All right, so first of all, we check if our context is not null. If our context is not null, then we create a geofencing event. Sure. Event, and we say geofencing event dot from intent. So we are going to be creating a geofencing event from the intent that we are actually passing. And geofence, then we create the transition. And it's geofencing transition is going to be based on a geofencing event that we created geofencing transition. All right. So this transition, is what this geofencing transition that we're creating here is what would check whether it's an enter or not. So these are the transition, an enter, a dwell, or an exit. Okay. So we'll be using that as a check, and we're going to say that if our geofencing transition is equal to geofence dot transition enter, or our geofence transition is equal to geofence dot dwell. Okay, so it's either we enter or we dwell. If we enter or we dwell, we've been in there for the stipulated amount of time, then, well, I'll just check that my intent is not null. And I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, since let me retrieve the values from the intent. So intent dot get string extra, and I'm going to get key. Okay, it shouldn't be null. And I'm going to get message equals to my intent. Get string extra, and I'm saying get me my message and make sure it's not null. All right, so cool. I've retrieved my key. Next is that I'm going to retrieve data from Firebase. So you see, we are extending the use of Firebase again, and this is to make it it's more of a refresher for you, and as well as seeing what else you could possibly do with Firebase. Okay, so we are going to create our Firebase instance, and that's the Firebase.database, and we import Firebase. All right, and so our reference, we create our references, Firebase.getReference, and our reference is reminders. We are using reminders because when we create the over here, our reference is reminders. When we're creating, we're using reminders. So when we are getting, we are using the same reminders. And to be able to retrieve data from Firebase, you need a listener. So I'm going to create a listener, and it's going to be an object, and it's going to be value event listener. Cool. Okay, so what am I getting in my value event listener? If I hover over this, I'm supposed to implement methods. I'm going to implement two methods on data change and on cancel. So what happens in the on data change? I'm going to retrieve value from the database, which is going to come in the form of a snapshot. And I'm going to say snapshot.get value. All right, and you could see different types of get value, but there is the one that requires a value type, okay, which is a class generic type T. So I'm going to provide my data type. I'm saying that you should get value of type reminder. That means that when it gets the data, that the data would be formatted into a reminder object, which we have created. Okay, so if my reminder now, my object is not equal to null, that means that it was able to retrieve it successfully. Then I want to show the latitude and longitude of this particular reminder in a notification. So I'm going to call maps activity, and I'm going to say show notification. And my show notification is going to take a context and a message. So the message is going to be the message that I pass from the activity that I retrieve here. And so this is it. And in the uncancelled, I'm just going to print. And I'm going to say reminder uncancelled. Error.details. Okay. So if cancelled, I'm going to print the error. So this is all that we do inside the listener. All right. So after that, now that we have created the listener for the reminder listener, we need to go a step forward to actually retrieve our value. So we are going to say the child, or the value we want to get, is our reference dot child. And what reference are we are looking for a particular value of that has this key. So we are going to provide the key. So when we go to reminders, we're trying to find the items under reminders. In this example, locations, it has 4 items under it. So whichever key we provide, we are trying to find that particular item. And when we expand it, whatever is in there is of the particular data structure that we provide here. So in our case, it's going to be this key would map to a reminder object inside. So we get the key and we are saying that, okay, with this key, we are adding a value event listener in there. So this listener, with this event key, we are able to get, we are able to invoke this listener, and this listener is going to get to the snapshot and it's going to return our object for us. And that object we are going to display in our notification. All right. So this is it. Next is to create our notification inside the maps activity so that we are able to see what notification we get. But because we are trying to use notification. Yeah, okay. So we are going to create a notification. And this is not the first time you are being introduced to a notification, so I won't go into details, but we are going to create this. And so to do it, notice something that in here, we are calling the maps activity directly, and we are invoking the should notification on it. So it means that we need to create a companion object. Okay, so we create a companion object and we are going to create a function in there, and we are saying show notification. And it takes a context and a message, I think. Would verify that pretty soon. Yeah, okay, so it takes a context and a message. So you see immediately it is created. Everything is working out fine. So what is going to be notification? Well, we can, first of all, we are going to create a channel, channel ID, and we are going to say what should be our reminder notification, reminder notification channel. And we are going to say, we give our notification an ID and a random ID. We make sure that it is unique. Our notification ID, we're going to add some randomness to it. So random notification ID, and then we're going to say next. So next int, and we say it should start from between 1 and 30. So we're going to pick this number and it's going to generate a random number and it's going to add to our notification ID so that it is unique each time at least. So the more randomness, the greater this value, the more randomness you're going to have in your notification ID. All right, so next is to create a notification builder. Our notification builder is going to be notification compat.builder. And that is going to take the context that application context. Okay, then we're going to say set small icon. We want to give our notification to have an icon. So we're going to say, okay, r.drawable. Let's create an alarm because we want to say it is an alarm. So we come to our resources folder click on drawable and vector asset. We click on the clip path. We can search for alarm and then OK. And all we need to do is to name this IC alarm 24 and then finish. Okay, so in here, we are going to say IC alarm 24. Good. And we're going to set content title. And we're going to say it should be string app name. We should use get string. Oh, okay. Yeah, get string, but we need to use a context. Nice. Okay, so set content message content text. We put in our message in there. And we can also set the style. And we're going to say notification compat.big text style. And we say big text message. All right, some more to go. And next, we're going to say set priority. And our priority should be notification compat dot priority default. So we could set it to high, low. Let's set it to default. All right, next we create a notification manager. And we use our context and we say get system service. And so it's going to be notification service. And so we run a check. And check is going to be if our application is running on Android version O and above, then we need to create it slightly differently. Other than that, we create it a little differently. So we are going to check if our build.version.sdkint is greater than or equal to build.version codes.o. This time around, not Q, O, because that was when changes were introduced for notifications. So we will, if the version is O and above, we will need to create a channel. And that is going to be our notification channel. And that takes a channel ID, which we define at the top. It takes a title, which would be context, get string r.strings app name, based on the app name, and notification manager. The importance, we say importance should be default. Okay, then we say dot apply description. Our description should be equal to context get string r.string dot app name again. All right, so now that this is done, we have created a channel. We can go ahead and now create the notification itself. So we call notification manager and we say create notification channel. Just a moment. Ah, yeah. Okay, so we need to define this as notification manager. Okay. So now we can say create notification channel, and then we supply the channel. Other than that, if the notification is, if our device is not up to Android O or is below that, we say notification build notification manager dot notify, and then we get a notification ID. We use a notification ID, and we call our notification builder dot build. Okay, so this is how we create it if we are running on an Android version less than, hang on, what is this? Oh, okay, this is deprecated, so we need to provide, says all posted notifications must specify a notification channel ID. So we add the channel ID in here. Okay, great. So everything works fine then. This should be notification. And so where are you? Yeah. Okay. So this looks good. So now whenever there's, we create a geofence and the user walks into a geofence, this notification should pop up. All right, let us run this. So I clean the project first. And then I'm going to build, but this should fail, I think, because we haven't defined the broadcast receiver yet. And we haven't defined other permissions, so we can come in and say users permission course, and then users permission background location. And we can also include the receiver, exactly, just like that. Okay. All right, so we can come here and rebuild our project. It was good that we caught this beforehand, otherwise it was going to throw an error. We can take all this off and okay, dependencies are okay. All right, let us run this then. All right, so first of all, it's asking to access our location. And when it says that it's for the application to be able to access our location all the time, even when we're not using the app, we should allow all notifications in it. We should go into the settings. So I'm going to go into the settings and I'm going to say allow all the time so that it allows location every time I am, even when I'm not using the app. So there, you see that it zones into the specific location that I provided. Yeah, here, but not this one because it doesn't have the latitude and longitude. So we don't see your icon that shows where you are. Over here, you can see the zoom in and zoom out buttons that we enabled here using the UI settings control. Okay, so this is good. Now we are going to zoom in a bit into this area. And I'm going to open notification. All right, so I'm going to click on an area here to create. Let me bring up our database. Okay, cool. So I'm going to do it this way. Now, when I click on an area here, when I create long click on a map to create a geolocation here, I'm going to provide the same location on this map here. This is my controls. So whatever location I set, for instance, if I click here and I say set location, you're going to see that this icon is going to move from there to the location that I click. The same way it's going to work on this, but we are not seeing my current location, although we have enabled it because the application does not know the previous, my previous location. We just run it for the first time. And so I'm going to click here. Okay, this is not working. Beautiful. Let's go back into our application and see why our long click isn't working. All right, so where is our long click? Oh, nice. We created it, but we never added it to the application. And so we can come to the on map ready, and we are going to say set long click, and we're going to provide a map. Okay, now when we long click, it should work. So let's wait for it to refresh. Awesome. So now you see our previous location was picked up because I interacted with this map here. It picked up the previous location. So now we can see where we are at, which is cool. Okay, so now I'm going to click somewhere here or even here to create a geolocation. Oh, okay. Application fails. Let's see what the problem is. Okay, it says Firebase is not initialized. Okay, Firebase is not initialized. Why is that the case? Google JSON is here. Oh, okay. Code.geofencing. We are not using the right, we didn't download, I didn't bring in the right application, just hold on. Geofencing clone. Okay, so I think I must have downloaded the wrong JSON file. And so let me clear this. Go to my downloads, find any JSON, Google JSON files in there. Let me see if I have any pre-existing files in there so I can delete them. EFG. Okay, there's nothing in there. All right, so I'm gonna come back to this. Is it? No, this is what we're looking for, geofencing clone. Yeah, so I'm gonna select, I'm gonna click download. So it downloads my Google JSON, and I'm gonna go back to the application and I'm gonna delete this. Where's delete? And I'm going to delete this Google JSON file. And then I'm going to bring in the new one that was just downloaded. Where is the file? Google. Okay, seen it. Okay, so I'm going to go to my app and I'm saying move refactor. All right, code method geofencing, geofencing clone. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so if I'm, okay, this, I must be making a mistake somewhere in my build.gradle file. This is provided. Oh, okay, nice. All right, so I don't have the Google the Google services in my let me say, okay. Yeah, if I go to next and I go to next, in here, you see this plugin. I don't have this plugin in my application. And so this was a good exercise. So we can come to the app level build.gradle, and then I'm going to add that. So I'm going to take this out. Okay. And then I'm going to sync. All right. Now that I have done that, I can run the application again. And I should go back to my real-time database. Okay. It's going to run one more time. All right, so now I can click. Great. So now it creates the geolocation for me, and immediately you see it creates the new reference, and it adds an ID in there with a reminder. So you see the reminder we had the key, the lat, and then the lang. It just puts the object in there for us. All right, this is great. Now I want to see that when we change the location, currently we are here. Thankfully, the emulator allows us to be able to manipulate our location. So what if I move my location into this area? Okay, first of all, I'm going to move my location somewhere here, and then we see whether we received a notification or not. So I'm going to click this just so I am far away from, no, I think with this, I'll still be in the, okay, let me go to Kampala and set my location. Wow, I have vanished from the map. Okay, I went far away. So you see, it just moves. So I can come and states here that this should be my current location. And you see it is moving. My current location is moving, which is really good. So now what happens, and each time you don't see any notification. All right, there is no notification yet. Okay, so what happens if I move to my current location, which is here, all right, or somewhere close? So let me move into the, into it. And so when I set the location, you see it's coming in, and now we are in the location, and immediately there is a pop-up. Okay, so we have received a notification. And what is our notification? Woohoo, geofence detected. Awesome. It means our application is working. And we could retrieve the particular reminders here. We retrieved it, but we are not using it. And so in our geofence, oh, excuse me. In our Geofence receiver, although we are retrieving the value, we are not putting the message. The message that we are putting in is coming from within our application. So one thing I can do is just change this and add a var note. I'm saying it's going to be a string, and that's simple. And so I come here and I look for a reminder. Okay, in creating a reminder, I'm going to say, what will be my notes? Woof, woof. And I'm going to say lat long dots latitude lat long dot longitude. Okay, well, I would say at. All right, so this is going to be my message each time. And so I'm going to rerun this. Geofence. Okay, so instead of the message, I'm going to say reminder dot note. Okay, so I'm going to refresh again. Oh, excuse me. Okay. All right, so you see the location, last location, known location is there. And so I'm going to come to the beginning, okay, of this particular location. And then I'm just going to say, okay, this is somewhere here. So set location. All right, so our notification comes in, and all right, so the message that we pass onto the database is what is displayed. And we could confirm this by looking into the database to be sure. So this is a new entry, and you see the message right here. And to differentiate, you could look at the numbers and you could see that the latitude is different. The longitude is definitely different. And this latitude and longitude is what is in here. And you could also see that this contained 3 elements, but this one contains 4. That's because it's a NoSQL database. Everything we dump in there is accepted as JSON. And so this is cool. So today you have learned about how to send various notifications using geofencing. This code is available on GitHub. I have a link provided, but I want to show you a little about job scheduler. There isn't enough time to do this. By job scheduler, you schedule a job, and it's going to run over a certain time period. So like I said earlier, this one we're setting it to run every 15 minutes. And so when scheduling a job, you provide an ID to the job so that you can have access to that ID in order to cancel the job later on if you want to. And you can also set that, okay, this particular job should only run when your phone, your device is charging or not. So here I'm stating false, but it could also be true. So this type of job will not run unless your phone was charging. And you see some of these notifications giving you when you are trying to update your phone. They tell you to make sure that it's connected to a charger. And also the required network type. You can set that your network your job should only run when it is connected to Wi-Fi. So you could set that to unmetered. And the time period, you can change the time here, but the default that Google allows is 15 minutes, the minimum 15 minutes. Yes, so they're able to save users' battery. And all you have to do is to just get a job scheduler service and call this schedule. So your scheduler, schedule, and then you provide this job information to it. And whatever you have defined in your job scheduler is going to run. So for instance, in my job scheduler service, I'm saying that I should just run on job start. It has two methods, on job start and on job stop. These are overridden. So I'm just saying that when I start a job, I should do something in the background, do some background work. And this is my background work. My background work is to call the notification and show it. So after 15 minutes, it's going to show this notification. And then after 15 minutes, it's going to show this notification again. And after 15 minutes, it's going to show this notification again. And that is what this job will be doing. So if you have an application that is going to be in the background and you want to be updating states, for instance, WhatsApp, and you want to update that messages have come through, or you are receiving readings from a certain device and you want to run this in the background every 15 minutes to get a new set of data, you can just use the job scheduler and it's going to work for you. So I have implemented this in the code, which you're going to have on GitHub. A link has been provided. And so you can look at it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And this is it. So I'm going to see you next time. So thank you for coming.